I ordered that turnstile unlocked now. Harrison's shout exploded in the corporate lobby, making the noise of conversations and phones die instantly. The silence that followed was heavy, cut only by the mechanical and irritating sound of the locked turnstile. Beep, beep, beep. Harrison Prescott, majority heir of that textile empire, was pounding on the tempered glass of the entrance. His face was red, the veins in his neck bulging, cold sweat already trickling down his temple. He violently pushed the wheels of his chair, throwing his body forward, banging the chair's metal against the steel barrier. "Are you deaf, Chief Barnes?" he roared, his voice hoarse from not shouting in a long time. "I own this damn place. Let me in." On the other side of the turnstile, Chief Barnes, the head of security, a man Harrison had seen grow within the company, to whom he had given his first job, stood with his arms crossed. He was sweating, looking around, but he didn't move. "I can't, Harrison," Chief Barnes murmured, lacking the courage to meet his boss's furious gaze. "Your badge won't scan. It's blocked in the system." "What do you mean, blocked? I'm the chairman of the board. Get out of my way." Harrison, in a fit of rage and despair, backed up his chair and charged forward. Wham! The impact of the metal footrests against the security guard's shin made a dull thud. Chief Barnes grunted and took a step back, but before the path could open, two other younger guards closed in, forming a wall of black suits. "It's a direct order, sir," Chief Barnes said, his voice hardening to mask his shame. "An order from Conrad. He said you've been removed, that you're unstable." The word echoed through the corporate lobby like a slap in the face. Unstable? Harrison let out a nervous, incredulous laugh. His hands trembled on the wheelchair's rim. "He called me crazy? Is that what you all think? That I'm crazy?" Dozens of employees stopped. No one was working anymore. Cell phones were discreetly raised to chest height. They were filming. Harrison's humiliation was being broadcast live. "What a pathetic scene, huh, cousin?" The voice came from above, velvety, calm, cruel. Harrison threw his head back, looking up at the glass mezzanine that overlooked the corporate lobby. There he was, Conrad, impeccable in a navy Italian suit, holding a leather briefcase, looking down with a smirk. He looked like a Roman emperor watching lions devour Christians. "Get down here, Conrad!" Harrison yelled, pointing a trembling finger. "Get down here and say it to my face. Order this entrance opened. The vote on the sale is today." Conrad adjusted the gold watch on his wrist unhurriedly. "The vote is for the executive board, Harrison, not for invalid former employees." He said the word invalid with sadistic pleasure. "And unfortunately, cousin, you'll have to turn around and go home to take your medication. I'm going to vote. The company is mine." Harrison tried to force his wheelchair forward again, but the security guards didn't even budge. "Oh, really?" Conrad raised an eyebrow. "Then go up. The meeting is on the 3rd floor. But what bad luck. We just had a power surge. The elevators are out, all of them." Harrison looked at the elevator panel in the back. The lights were off. It was a lie. It was a dirty, obvious trap. "You turned them off on purpose. You coward!" Harrison felt tears of hatred burn his eyes. "If you want to vote no so badly, climb the stairs." Conrad spread his arms challenging. His voice echoed for everyone to hear. "The stairs are right there. It's only 3 floors, Harrison. Show everyone you're a man capable of running this company. Or are you just going to stand there crying in the lobby?" Conrad let out a short chuckle, turned his back, and disappeared down the mezzanine corridor. Harrison saw red. The world around him turned red. Hatred pulsed in his temples. He didn't think about logic. He didn't think about the physical impossibility. He only thought that he needed to climb. "I'm going to climb. I'm going to kill him," he whispered, his teeth clenched. With a sudden movement, Harrison locked the wheels of his chair. Clack! He threw himself forward. There was no grace in the movement. His body, inert from the waist down, fell like a sack of potatoes onto the hard granite floor. Thud! "Ah!" He groaned loudly as his elbow hit the cold stone. A collective gasp ran through the crowd. Some covered their mouths, but no one moved. No one reached out. Conrad's fear was greater than their compassion. Harrison was on the floor, his expensive suit rubbing against the dirt. He dug his nails into the smooth floor, trying to pull himself. His legs dragged behind him, limp, heavy. He looked like a child learning to crawl, but with the face of a broken man. He dragged himself 1/2 meter. His breath was ragged. His heart felt like it would explode. He looked at the imposing white marble staircase in front of him. It looked like the Himalayas. He tried to hoist himself onto the first step. His arms trembled. He had no strength. The months drugged in bed, the lack of physical therapy, the depression, everything was taking its toll now. He hit his forehead on the cold marble of the first step and collapsed. He began to cry. It wasn't a cry of physical pain. It was the cry of dignity that had just died there on that floor in front of 300 people. He was trash. Conrad was right. He was nothing. Crash! The sound of a bucket full of water being violently dropped on the floor startled those nearby. Disinfectant water splashed onto an executive's shoe, who jumped back in disgust. "Hey, watch out!" But Paige did not hear, or if she did, she didn't care. Paige, 25 years old, wearing a slightly oversized grey cleaning uniform, yellow rubber gloves, and a scarf holding back her curly hair. She stood 10 feet from Harrison, gripping the mop handle so tightly her knuckles were white. She saw everything. She saw the arrogance of the man upstairs. She saw the burly security guards looking away. She saw the suited executives filming the misfortune of others to post in the company group chat. And she saw that man on the floor. Paige's father had died in a wheelchair, forgotten by Social Security, humiliated in hospital lines. That scene ignited a fire within her that she couldn't control. It wasn't rational. It was visceral. It was class rage, the rage of injustice, human rage. "You bunch of cowards!" she hissed through her teeth. Paige dropped the squeegee. The wooden handle hit the floor and rolled. She marched to the center of the corporate lobby. Her steps were heavy, firm, her rubber boots making a different sound from the secretary's thin heels. "Excuse me, get out of the way." She pushed a young man who was filming. His cell phone almost fell. She reached where Harrison was. He was huddled, hiding his face in his arms, sobbing softly. "Sir?" she called. Her voice wasn't sweet, it was urgent. Harrison didn't even lift his head. "Get out of here!" He yelled at the floor, his voice choked. "Leave me alone! Don't look at me!" He expected pity. And pity was the worst thing in the world. But Paige had no pity. She was in a hurry. Without asking permission, she crouched beside him. Her knee hit the hard floor unceremoniously. "You're not going to stay there licking the floor for your cousin to laugh at," she said. Her tone was a scolding, like a mother talking to a child who had fallen. Harrison looked up, startled. He saw the simple face of that young woman, without makeup, with dark circles under her eyes, like someone who woke up at 4 in the morning to catch 2 buses. He saw her eyes. They were black, deep, and burning. "Who are you?" he whispered, confused. "I'm the person who's going to take you upstairs. Now." Harrison blinked, thinking he was delirious. "It's stairs, girl. I'm heavy." "There's no way." "Yes, there is," she retorted. "On my back." "What?" Harrison leaned back. "Are you crazy?" "You're the crazy one for staying here humiliating yourself," she shot back. At that moment, Chief Barnes, the head of security, noticed the commotion and stepped forward, trying to regain the authority he had lost. "Hey, you, the cleaner! Paige, right? Get out of there now!" Chief Barnes yelled. "Oh, you crazy girl. You'll get Harrison's suit dirty. You'll be terminated for cause. Get away from him." Paige slowly turned her head. The look she gave Chief Barnes made the big man swallow hard. There was so much contempt in that gaze, it was worth 1,000 curses. "Your conscience is dirty, Chief Barnes," she yelled, her voice echoing throughout the entire corporate lobby. You saw this man give you a job, and now you leave him on the floor. If you're not going to help, shut up." Chief Barnes froze. He turned red. He backed away. Paige turned back to Harrison. "Come on, Harrison. I don't have all day and the vote is about to start. Grab onto my neck." "I can't," Harrison stammered. The shame was unbearable. "It's humiliating." "Giving up is humiliating," she cut in. "I used to carry 110-pound bags of cement at my father's construction site." "How much do you weigh, sir?" "Around 150 pounds. I can handle it. I have broad shoulders." Harrison looked at the stairs. He looked at her face. She was the only helping hand in that cursed place. He swallowed his pride. The taste was bitter. With trembling hands, he hoisted himself up slightly and wrapped his arms around the cleaner's neck. "Hold on," he warned, closing his eyes to avoid seeing the world spin. Her scent filled his nostrils. It wasn't French perfume. It was the smell of bleach, sweat, and cheap lavender soap, a real scent. "Lock your fingers," she commanded. Paige took a deep breath, filling her lungs. She got down on all fours, felt the dead weight of his body on her back. It was heavy, heavier than she had imagined. His legs were useless burdens that dangled. She tensed her thick thighs, accustomed to heavy labor. She grunted, straining. She began to lift. Her legs trembled violently. Her knee cracked. "She's going to fall!" someone shouted from the crowd. But she did not fall. She planted her foot firmly. She stood upright. Harrison was hanging onto her piggyback style, but with no joy. His face was hidden in the crook of her neck, burning with shame. Paige adjusted her grip, holding him firmly under his thighs with her gloved hands. She took the first step toward the staircase. 1, 2, 3. The corporate lobby fell into absolute silence. It was a procession both grotesque and heroic at the same time, the small cleaner carrying the fallen giant. On the first floor, the initial adrenaline began to fade, giving way to brutal physical reality. Paige's breathing was already a loud wheeze, audible to those nearby. Ah. Sweat poured down her face, wetting the grey collar of her uniform, soaking the scarf on her head. Harrison, with his ear pressed against her back, heard her heart beating desperately, too fast, like a war drum. Thump, 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 thump. "You won't make it," he whispered in her ear, feeling every tremor of her body transfer to his. "Let me go, please. I'm too heavy. Stay. Still," she replied through gritted teeth, focused only on the next step. "Don't move." They reached the landing between the first and second floors. Some employees emerged from the glass-walled rooms, attracted by the noise. They watched the scene, paralyzed. No one was laughing anymore. The woman's effort shamed the cowardice of all of them. Now, on the second floor, it was pure pain. Paige's legs burned as if they were on fire. Lactic acid flooded her muscles. She felt cramps in her calves. She stopped halfway up the flight of stairs, leaning her shoulder against the wall to keep from falling backward. Her rubber boots slipped slightly on the polished marble. "Paige!" Harrison called out, remembering the name the security guard had shouted. "Stop! You're going to collapse!" She did not respond. She closed her eyes for a second, swallowed the dryness in her throat, took a deep breath and pushed off the wall. "Almost there," she said to herself. As she took a step toward the next flight, disaster struck. The sweat dripping from her face had wet the smooth marble step. When she stepped with her right foot to gain momentum, her rubber boot lost its grip. "Watch out!" Harrison cried out, feeling her body give way. Paige lost her balance. Harrison's weight pulled her backward. If they fell backward, Harrison would hit his head and could die, or she would break her spine. In a desperate suicidal reflex, Paige threw her body weight forward against the edge of the steps. Crack! The sound was horrifying. Bone hitting stone. Ah! Her scream tore through the air. Her right knee slammed hard into the sharp edge of the marble. Her uniform pants ripped instantly. Bright red blood welled up, staining the grey fabric, trickling down her shin. She fell to her knees on the step, gasping, blinded by pain. "That's enough! Stop!" Harrison tried to break free, desperate. "You're badly hurt. Let go of me, Paige, for God's sake." Paige was trembling. The pain was excruciating, the kind that makes your vision blur. She held his arms so tightly she could leave marks. She lifted her head. Sweat stung her eyes. Upstairs, just 30 feet away, was the frosted glass door of the executive suite. The shadows of men inside were visible. Conrad's muffled voice could be heard speaking. "I won't give up," she whispered, her voice trembling, tearful yet unbreakable. "I'm stubborn, sir. We didn't swim all this way just to trip at the finish line." She braced her hand on the golden handrail. Her yellow-gloved fingers slipped. With an animalistic grunt, she forced her injured leg. "One." She climbed. "Ah!" she moaned as she put her weight on her cut knee. Harrison stopped struggling. He understood. If he moved, it would be worse. He held her tighter. He pressed his face into her sweaty hair and cried silently. For the first time in 3 years, he did not feel alone. That woman was bleeding for him. Blood dripped onto the white marble with each step. Drip, drip. They reached the top. Conrad's assistant, Audrey, an impeccable blonde who was filing her nails at the reception desk, jumped up and brought her hand to her mouth, horrified. "My God! What is this?" Audrey shrieked. "You can't go in there. Look at the state of you. The floor, you're getting blood everywhere." Paige did not even look at her face. She focused on the solid wood double doors in front of her. "Open the door," Harrison said to the assistant, his voice icy. Audrey shook her head, paralyzed by disgust and fear. Paige did not wait. Since her hands were not free, she turned her back to the door. "Hold on tight," she said, and she kicked, a forceful kick with the sole of her boot, using anger, pain, and exhaustion as her strength. Bam! The door burst open with a crash, slamming against the inner wall of the boardroom. The cold air conditioning hit Paige's flushed face. Inside the room, time stood still. Around the oval mahogany table, 12 suited men, American and Chinese investors and the local board, spun their chairs simultaneously. At the head of the table, Conrad had his Mont Blanc pen suspended in the air, millimeters from signing the sales contract. His victorious smile froze and crumbled, transforming into a mask of shock. The image in the doorway was brutal. A small, filthy cleaner with torn and bloodied pants, her face red with effort, carrying Harrison Prescott on her back as if he were a sacred cross. Paige entered. Her step was limping, dragging. Thump, thump. She walked to the head of the table opposite Conrad's. The chairman's empty chair was there. Done. She let out all the air from her lungs. Carefully she turned and crouched, letting Harrison slide from her back onto the soft leather armchair. As soon as the weight was off, Paige nearly fainted. She had to brace herself against the table with both gloved hands to keep from falling flat on her face. She was breathing as if she had run a marathon, her chest rising and falling violently. Harrison slumped into the seat, exhausted, his suit wrinkled, his hair matted to his forehead, but he was there, sitting in his chair. He adjusted his jacket with trembling hands. He lifted his head. His gaze crossed the table and pierced Conrad. "We're a little late," Harrison said. His voice was hoarse, weak, but imbued with an authority that made the entire room tremble. "The elevator broke down. Remember, cousin?" Conrad swallowed hard. He looked at the investors who were gaping, alternating their gaze between the blood on the cleaner's leg and the air in the chair. "Harrison," Conrad tried to smile, but a nervous grimace emerged. "This is ridiculous. Look at the state of you two. We are in the middle of a solemn signing. You should be home, resting. I am the majority shareholder of this company," Harrison cut in, his voice rising. He slammed his open hand on the table. "Thwack! I hold 51% of the voting shares, and as long as I breathe, nothing is signed here without my order." He looked at the document in front of Conrad. And my vote is no. Conrad stood up, furious, knocking his chair backward. You can't do this. The deal is closed. They will withdraw the offer. You are an invalid, Harrison. You don't have the mental capacity to decide anything. Conrad pointed at Paige with disgust. Look at you. You had to come in on the maid's back like a beast of burden. That proves you're pathetic. Harrison didn't shout. He looked at Paige Brooks. She stood there beside him, bleeding, trembling, but with her head held high, glaring at Conrad Prescott with hatred. Her strength flowed into him. You're the pathetic one, Conrad Prescott, who needs to hide wheelchairs and turn off elevators to feel like a man, Harrison said, low and lethal. He looked at the door, where Chief Barnes and the other security guards had just arrived, out of breath from running up the stairs after Paige Brooks. Chief Barnes, Harrison called. The head of security flinched. He looked at the true owner in the chair. Yes, Mr. Prescott? Conrad Prescott is no longer part of this company. Escort him out. Now, a murmur of shock ran through the table. Conrad Prescott's eyes widened. You can't fire me. I'm the CEO. The board supports me. I am the board, Harrison roared, his voice exploding in the room. Get out of my office. Chief Barnes, realizing power had shifted and perhaps trying to compensate for his earlier cowardice, didn't hesitate. He stepped forward and grabbed Conrad by the arm. Let's go, sir. No scene. Let go of me! Conrad shouted, struggling as he was dragged by the guards. You'll pay for this! Harrison, you'll regret this! Conrad was dragged to the door. He clung to the doorframe, resisting, his face red with hatred. He looked into Harrison's eyes and played his final card. You think you've won, don't you? Enjoy your 5 minutes of glory, cripple. He smiled, a cold, demonic smile. I've already filed for full conservatorship. Judge Thornton will receive the report tomorrow. I'll prove you're incompetent, that you're insane. He shifted his gaze to Paige. And I'll prove you're being manipulated by that trash. Tomorrow, Harrison, you'll be a vegetable again, and you, cleaner, you're going to jail. The security guards pulled Conrad, and the door closed, muffling his screams. Silence returned to the room. Heavy, suffocating. The investors began gathering their papers, embarrassed, leaving one by one without a word. Only Harrison and Paige remained. Harrison's adrenaline evaporated in a second. The world began to spin. Black spots danced before his eyes. Thank you, he tried to say to her, turning his face, but his voice faded. Darkness came quickly. Harrison slumped to the side, fainting from exhaustion and stress. Paige, despite the pain in her knee, was quick. She caught him before he hit his head on the wooden armrest of the chair. She pulled his head to her chest, staining his face with the sweat and blood from their struggle. She stroked his hair, feeling his weak heartbeat. She looked at the empty doorway, where Conrad's threat still echoed. She knew he wasn't bluffing. The war had only just begun. And she was afraid, very afraid. Sometime later, the master bedroom door of the Prescott estate closed with a heavy click of the lock. For the first time in 3 years, Harrison was safe. Inside the room, the air felt less suffocating, but the tension was palpable. Harrison was sitting on the edge of the bed, still pale, his hands trembling slightly over his inert knees. Paige Brooks was leaning against the door, breathing deeply, as if she had just escaped a war. Her uniform was still stained with blood on her knee and smudged with sweat, but she didn't seem to feel the pain. You need a doctor, Paige Brooks, Harrison said, his voice low, breaking the silence. That knee looks bad. And leave you here alone with that housekeeper. Paige shook her head, limping to the nightstand to get a glass of water. Mrs. Gable has a venomous look. If I leave, she'll come in. And if she comes in, God knows what she'll put in your water. Harrison looked at her. It was strange. He was the millionaire, the owner of everything, but he felt like a scared boy depending on that courageous woman. I fired the nursing staff, Harrison said firmly. I just sent a message to HR. Starting today, no one enters this room without my authorization. Only you. Paige stopped with the glass in her hand. "I'm not a nurse, Mr. Prescott. I'm a cleaner. I know how to clean floors. I don't know how to take care of—" She paused, searching for the right word. "A cripple," Harrison completed bitterly. "An injured man," she corrected, looking into his eyes. "I don't have the training, Mr. Prescott. I don't need a degree, Paige. I need loyalty." Harrison turned his body in the bed, facing her. "I'll pay you triple your salary. Will you accept being my caregiver, my bodyguard?" Paige's eyes widened. Triple the salary would change her family's life back home. It would pay for her mother's surgery, her sister's school. "Are you serious?" "I've never been more serious. I'm surrounded by vultures, Paige. You're the only one who hasn't tried to peck at me." Paige placed the glass on the table. "I accept, but with one condition." "What is it?" "You're going to take a proper shower now, and you're going to eat real food, no more watery soup." Harrison smiled. It was a weak smile, but genuine. "It's a deal." The shower was a silent and awkward, but necessary ceremony. Paige helped Harrison transfer to the shower chair. The bathroom was enormous, black marble and gold, cold as a tomb. When Paige took off Harrison's shirt, she froze. She brought a hand to her mouth to stifle a gasp. Harrison's back was a map of neglect. There were deep red marks on his shoulder blades and at the base of his spine. Bed sores. Wounds caused by lying in the same position for days, with no one to turn him. "My God," Paige whispered. "They left you to rot in bed." Harrison lowered his head, humiliated. "Sometimes I'd ask for water and no one would come. I'd just watch the clock. 2, 4, 6 hours. I'd hear them laughing in the kitchen." Paige felt a warm tear roll down her face. She picked up the soft sponge and the liquid soap. "This is over, sir," she said, her voice choked. "As long as I'm here, never again." She began to wash him. Her touch was firm, yet infinitely gentle on his wounds. There was no malice, no shame. There was only human care. Harrison Prescott closed his eyes, feeling the warm water and her calloused hand cleaning not just the dirt, but the loneliness of years. Outside, in the dark hallway, Mrs. Gable pressed her ear against the solid wood door. She heard the sound of the shower. She heard Paige Brooks's soft voice. Mrs. Gable took her cell phone from the pocket of her immaculate apron. Her nimble fingers typed a message to Conrad Prescott. She locked herself in with him. "She is tending to his wounds. He will recover quickly if this continues." The reply vibrated in her hand, cold and direct. "Don't let him get stronger. The plan continues. Prepare the ground." 2 weeks passed. The room had changed. The heavy curtains were open, letting the sun in. The smell of medicine and mildew was gone, replaced by the scent of cleanliness and lavender that Paige Brooks brought. Harrison was different. His castaway beard was gone, revealing an angular, handsome face. He was exercising with light dumbbells that Paige had improvised with water bottles, but the tension in the house only grew. Conrad didn't appear, but he sent reminders: a bouquet of lilies, funeral flowers, a box of Swiss chocolates, which Paige threw in the trash, fearing poison. On a rainy afternoon, Harrison called Paige over to the bookshelf. "Paige, we need to prepare. Conrad's silence is worse than his shouts." "What do you want to do? Change the locks?" "It's no use. The house is his on paper. I need proof." Harrison looked at a painting on the wall. "Push that painting aside." Paige obeyed. Behind the painting there was a digital safe built into the wall. "I don't have the password, sir." "I do." Harrison dictated the numbers. 190592, the date my mother died. The safe beeped and opened. Click. Inside there wasn't much. Some old documents and a thick wad of cash, bound with a rubber band. "I've kept this here for 5 years, for an emergency," Harrison explained. "Take it all." Paige took the cash. It was a lot. "What do I do with this?" "You're going out now. Take a taxi. Go downtown, to a spy shop. Buy the best hidden camera you can find." "A camera? Do you think he'll try to get in here?" "I'm sure of it. And when he comes in, we have to catch him red-handed." Harrison held her arm. Paige, buy one with night vision and its own battery. If he cuts the power, the camera has to keep recording. Paige nodded, tucking the cash inside her clothes. I'll be back in a flash. Lock this door and don't open it for anyone. Not even the Pope. Paige left. Harrison was left alone, listening to the sound of rain hitting the window. He felt a chill down his spine. He knew he was playing chess with a psychopath. 3 hours later, Paige Brooks returned, soaked. She took a modern, black-mirrored digital desk clock from her bag. The salesperson said it's the best, she whispered, locking the door again. It has infrared for total darkness. It records 48 hours on its internal battery. The lens is right here, hidden in the number 12. Harrison Prescott took the clock. His hands trembled with anxiety. Perfect. Let's put it on the nightstand. They positioned the clock, strategically angled to capture Harrison's bed and the entrance door. Is it recording? Harrison asked. The little red light blinked 3 times and went out. Yes, it's recording. Now we have a third eye, Harrison sighed. Come on, Conrad. You can come. It was 7 in the evening when the storm worsened. Thunder made the windows vibrate. The doorbell rang. Paige Brooks and Harrison Prescott exchanged a look. It's him, Paige said, peeking through a gap in the curtain. The black car is outside. Harrison straightened his back in his wheelchair. Let him in. We're recording. Act naturally. Minutes later, the doorknob turned. The door was unlocked because Harrison had ordered it unlocked to avoid raising suspicions that they were conspiring. Conrad entered. He wore a wide fake smile and carried a bottle of wine under his arm. Mrs. Gable, the housekeeper, followed closely behind to take his wet coat. Good evening, family, Conrad said, his voice echoing in the room. What a storm, huh? I came to see if my favorite cousin needed anything. I need peace, Conrad, Harrison said dryly. What do you want? I came to make amends. Conrad walked over to the nightstand. I brought some wine, a special vintage. Shall we toast? Conrad placed the wine bottle on top of the nightstand, exactly in front of the clock camera. Harrison saw. His heart pounded. The bottle was blocking the lens. If anything happened, the camera would only film the wine label. Conrad smiled and stepped away, heading towards the bedroom's bathroom. I'll just wash my hands. Mrs. Gable, get us some glasses. As soon as Conrad entered the bathroom, Harrison snapped his fingers at Paige and frantically pointed at the bottle with his eyes. Move it, he whispered, only moving his lips. Paige understood immediately. This wine is warm, sir, she said aloud, for Conrad to hear from the bathroom. I'll put it here on the dresser to breathe. Paige picked up the bottle and moved it, clearing the camera's view. The clock's field of vision was clear again, the bed, the door, and the center of the room. Conrad exited the bathroom, drying his hands. He looked at the table, saw that the bottle had been moved, but didn't suspect the camera. He just thought it was a maid's doing. So, cousin, Conrad began. Crack. Thunder boomed outside, and at the same second, the power to the entire mansion cut out. Total darkness. Pitch black. Oh, wonderful, Conrad's voice rang out in the dark. Paige, Harrison called out, tense. I'm here, Doctor. I'll get my phone's flashlight. At that moment, a sharp, metallic sound came from the bedroom door. Clack. Click. It was the sound of a key turning in the lock, but the door was already open. No. Was it a master key locking the door from the outside? No. The door burst open violently. Heavy footsteps invaded the dark room. Who's there? Harrison yelled. The spy camera, with its automatic infrared sensor, continued recording silently in the dark. It saw what human eyes could not. 2 enormous security guards entering with the help of Mrs. Gable, the housekeeper, who was holding the door. Grab the woman! Conrad's voice ordered in the dark. No, let go of me! Paige screamed. There was the sound of a struggle. Paige knocked over a lamp. Crash! Harrison felt strong hands grip his shoulders in the chair. What is this? He roared. He felt a sweet smell on a damp cloth being pressed against his nose and mouth, and at the same time a sharp sting in his neck. An injection. "Stay still, cousin," Conrad's voice whispered in his ear. Harrison tried to hold his breath, but the injected drug was potent. His body went limp in seconds, his arms fell, his head drooped. He was conscious but paralyzed. It was as if he had been buried alive inside his own body. "Turn on the generator, Mrs. Gable," Conrad ordered. Seconds later, the emergency lights and then the main lights came back on. The scene was revealed, and the camera recorded everything in high definition. Harrison was slumped in his wheelchair, drooling slightly, his eyes wide with terror, unable to move or speak. Paige was on the floor, being held by two thugs. Her lip was cut. "You coward!" "What did you give him?" Paige screamed, spitting blood. Conrad adjusted his suit, calm. "I gave him a sedative. He was very agitated." He turned to Mrs. Gable. "Mrs. Gable, the kit, now!" In front of Paige Brooks and in front of the camera, which now had a perfect view, Mrs. Gable took a plastic package from her apron pocket. She went to Paige Brooks's humble fabric bag, which was hanging on a chair. "No!" Paige Brooks screamed, trying to break free. "Don't do that!" Mrs. Gable opened the bag. She began to place the items one by one with methodical calm. 1, a stack of dollar bills. 2, a gold Rolex watch from Harrison's father. 3 vials of prescription medication. "There you go, Conrad Prescott," Mrs. Gable said, closing the bag. "The evidence of the crime is in place." Conrad Prescott smiled at Paige Brooks. "See how easy it is? You're no longer the heroic caregiver. Now you're the addicted thief who drugged her boss to steal his fortune." He picked up his cell phone. "Hello? Captain Reynolds? You can come up. The setup is ready." Harrison saw everything. He wanted to scream, wanted to jump at his cousin's throat, but his body was stone. He could only move his eyes. He looked at the clock on the table. "Please, record. Record everything." It didn't take 5 minutes. The police were already waiting at the gate, part of the scheme. The room was stormed by uniformed officers and a team of paramedics in white. "What do we have here?" Captain Reynolds asked, feigning surprise. "A tragedy, Captain Reynolds." Conrad put on his best sad face. "My housekeeper suspected the cleaner was stealing. When we came to confront her, she freaked out. Harrison was like this, completely drugged." Captain Reynolds went to Paige Brooks's bag. He opened it. He took out the Rolex and the medication. "Caught red-handed trafficking, aggravated theft, and serious bodily harm." "That's a lie!" Paige Brooks screamed as she was forcefully handcuffed, hands behind her back. Click, click. "They planted this. Harrison knows. Look at him. He's paralyzed. They injected something into him." "The guy is overdosing," Captain Reynolds said, without even checking Harrison's pulse. "Take the woman." The officers dragged Paige. She kicked and screamed. "Harrison! Don't let them take you! Harrison!" Harrison heard her screams fading away. They were daggers to his heart. "And the patient?" the paramedic asked Conrad. Conrad pulled a paper from the inside pocket of his jacket. "Here is the temporary conservatorship order. I am the conservator. He needs immediate psychiatric hospitalization. Take him to Serenity Haven Care Center and be generous with the heavy sedative. He is aggressive." The nurses took Harrison. They did not have Paige's gentleness. They grabbed him by his arms and legs and threw him onto a rigid stretcher. They tightened the leather straps firmly around his wrists and ankles. Harrison was restrained, immobile, silent. As the stretcher passed through the door, he saw Conrad standing beside the nightstand. Conrad picked up the wine bottle that Paige had moved. "Tsk, tsk. Mulled wine is awful," Conrad said, staring into space. He did not see the camera. He was blinded by his own arrogance. Conrad poured a glass and toasted in the direction of the departing gurney. "Have a good trip, cousin. Send postcards from hell." Harrison was pushed down the hallway. The last image he had was of his room door closing. The room where he had been happy for 2 weeks. The room where the only evidence that could save them was a cheap watch silently blinking in the dark. Outside, the rain beat heavily against the ambulance. Harrison was thrown into the cold vehicle. The siren started. He was alone again, but this time he had a reason to survive: hatred and love. Harrison opened his eyes, but his body did not respond. He tried to lift his arm to scratch his nose, but felt the leather tighten around his wrist. He looked down. His arms and legs were tied to the hospital bed's side rails with thick restraint straps. Everything was white. The walls, the ceiling, the sheet. The only smell was of strong disinfectant and fear. "I see Sleeping Beauty has woken up." The voice came from the corner of the room. Harrison Prescott turned his neck, the only movement he had left. Conrad Prescott was sitting in a faux leather armchair, flipping through a yacht magazine, his legs elegantly crossed. Where am I?" Harrison Prescott's voice came out slurred. His tongue felt like it weighed a ton because of the sedatives. "Serenity Haven Care Center," Conrad Prescott replied without looking up from the magazine. "The best people storage facility. I mean, rehabilitation clinic in the state. It's for your own safety, cousin. You were very agitated." Harrison Prescott angrily tugged at the restraints. The leather creaked, but it didn't give. "Let me go, Conrad Prescott. You can't keep me here. I'm not crazy." "Oh, Harrison, the medical report says otherwise." Conrad tossed the magazine onto a table and walked to the bed. He leaned over Harrison, his face inches away, invading his personal space. "Acute psychotic episode. Induced chemical dependency. Judge Thornton granted me temporary guardianship last night. I'm your father now, Harrison, and like a good father, I make the tough decisions." Harrison's stomach churned. "What did you do with the company?" Conrad smiled, that smile of someone who had just won the lottery. "This morning at 8 o'clock, I signed the preliminary sales agreement with the Chinese. I reactivated the negotiation you tried to sabotage. The down payment hits the account tomorrow. The factory is gone, Harrison. It's going to become a luxury condominium complex." Harrison closed his eyes. His father's 70-year legacy, destroyed by whim and greed. "And Paige," Harrison asked, his voice faltering, "what did you do to her?" Conrad's expression hardened. Jealousy and disgust were evident. "That common girl, she is where she belongs. Women's correctional facility. Drug trafficking is a non-bailable offense, you know. She will get at least 15 years at minimum." Conrad saw a tear escape the corner of Harrison's eye and smiled, satisfied. "Forget about her, cousin. When she gets out, she will be an old woman with no teeth. And you, well, you will spend the rest of your life here drooling on this pillow. No one will believe you. You are the crazy one. She is the thief. And I am the suffering hero who saved the family." Conrad looked at the Rolex on his wrist, the Rolex that belonged to Harrison's father, which he had stolen from Paige's purse after the arrest. "I have to go. I have a lunch with the investors. Try to rest. Tomorrow is the hearing to confirm your incapacitation and her detention. Judge Thornton is coming to hear you, but honestly, do not even bother trying to speak." Conrad gave Harrison 2 humiliating pats on the face and left, whistling. Harrison was left alone in the white silence. The despair was physical. He wanted to scream but had no air. If Paige was imprisoned because of him, what was the point of living? The door opened again, light footsteps from rubber-soled sneakers. Harrison opened his eyes, expecting a rough orderly with another injection. But it was a woman, a short, plump woman, with the face of a tired grandmother wearing a white uniform. She carried a tray with a small cup of medicine and water. "Time for your medication, Harrison," she said. Her voice was soft, not mechanical. She unfastened the strap from his right hand so he could take the cup. Harrison felt the blood return to his arm. He looked at the small cup. They were 2 blue pills. The cocktail. He looked at the nurse. On her name tag, Meredith. Harrison had an instinct, the same instinct he had when he looked at Paige in the corporate lobby. He saw a glimmer of humanity. Meredith, he whispered, holding the cup, but not drinking. The nurse sighed wearily. Just take it, dear. If the supervisor comes by and sees you haven't taken it, they'll send in the restraint team, and the shot hurts. I'm not crazy, Harrison said, fixing his eyes on hers. I don't need this. Everyone says that, dear. It's part of the illness. They arrested the woman I love, Harrison spoke quickly, stumbling over his words, desperate to be heard. Paige. She's a cleaner. They planted drugs in her bag right in front of me. My cousin. He wants my inheritance. Meredith hesitated. Her hand stopped in mid-air. Delusions are usually about abstract persecution, aliens, voices. This was too specific, too painful. Please, Meredith. Harrison set the glass on the table and held her hand. His hand was cold. I don't have any money here. I have nothing to give you. But I swear on my mother's soul, if I take this medication, I'll turn into a zombie. And tomorrow, in front of Judge Thornton, I won't be able to defend her, and she'll be convicted of a crime she didn't commit. A thick tear fell from Harrison's eye and wet the nurse's hand. Meredith looked at the door. The hallway was empty. She had worked there for 20 years. She knew that many mentally ill patients were just troublesome relatives that wealthy families wanted to hide, and that young man had the saddest, most lucid gaze she had ever seen. "What do you want me to do?" she whispered, trembling. "The medication. Throw it away. And lend me your cell phone for 2 minutes. I need to call my father's attorney." Meredith felt her heart race. That would be grounds for being terminated for cause. But she looked at the young man's face. She remembered her son. In a swift movement, she grabbed the pills and threw them into the biohazard waste. She pretended to give him the water. "Quick!" She pulled her cell phone from her lab coat pocket, unlocked it, and handed it over. "If anyone comes in, pretend you're asleep." Harrison took the device. His hands trembled so much that he mistyped the password the first time. He dialed the number he had known by heart since childhood. It rang once, twice, 3 times. "Hello?" A deep, old, impatient voice answered. "Arthur Caldwell, it's me, Harrison." "Harrison? Young man, where are you? I've called you all week. Conrad said you travelled to a spa in Switzerland." "That's a lie. I'm being held at Serenity Haven Care Center. Conrad had me declared incompetent. He had Paige arrested. The cleaner, I saw it in the newspaper this morning. The cartel Cinderella. Things look bad, Harrison. It's a setup. It was all staged right in front of me. Arthur, listen to me. I have the proof." "What proof?" "Conrad controls everything. In my room. At the Prescott estate. There's a black digital alarm clock on my nightstand." "A clock? Harrison, focus!" "It's a camera, Arthur," Harrison whispered loudly. "I bought a spy camera. It recorded everything. Conrad planting the drugs, the injection they gave me. It's all on the memory card inside that clock." The line went silent. Arthur's sharp intake of breath was audible. "My God! Does Conrad know about this?" "No, he thinks it's just a cheap clock. Arthur, you have to get that clock before he redecorates the room. The hearing is tomorrow morning. I'll handle it. I'll get it out of there, and I'll get you out. Hang in there, kid. Pretend you took the medication. Drool if you have to." "Thank you, Arthur. Thank you." Harrison hung up and returned the phone. He was crying with relief. "Thank you, Meredith. You saved 2 lives today." The nurse quickly put away the phone and secured his arm back. "Pray, my son, because if your cousin finds out, we're both toast." She turned off the light and left. Harrison was left in the dark. But for the first time in days, it wasn't the darkness of the end, it was the darkness before dawn. The women's correctional facility was the opposite of the care center. It was hot, humid, and noisy. It smelled of sweat, cheap cigarettes, and sewage. Paige was huddled in the corner of an overcrowded prison cell with 15 other women. She was sitting on the floor, hugging her knees. Her face was swollen from Conrad's slap. Her injured knee, from the stairs, throbbed, unbandaged. "Hey, rookie!" Viper, a larger inmate with neck tattoos, approached. "Nice hair, huh? Be careful. In here they pull it out by the roots in a fight." Paige felt fear chill her spine. She touched her long curls. They were the only beautiful thing she had left. But she thought of Harrison. He was fighting out there, she hoped. She needed to survive in here. Paige Brooks went to the filthy prison cell bathroom. She found an old razor blade forgotten in a sink. Without a second thought, she grabbed a lock of her hair and cut. Snip, snip. The inmates watched, surprised. Paige Brooks cut her own hair with anger, with desperation. The strands fell into the dirty sink. She left it short, uneven, almost shaved close to her head, a little Johnny style, but poorly done. "There," she said to Viper, turning, her face wet with tears, but her chin held high. "Now there's nothing to pull." The inmate smiled, impressed. "You're crazy, girl, I like you." Just then, the correctional officer knocked on the bars. "Paige Brooks, lawyer's visit." Paige Brooks froze. "Lawyer?" She didn't even have money for the bus. She was led in handcuffs to the visitation room. She sat on the glass side. On the other side, it wasn't a tired public defender. It was an impeccably dressed gentleman in a grey suit, with white hair combed back and thick-rimmed glasses. He had an old leather briefcase. Paige picked up the intercom. "Who are you, sir?" Her voice trembled. The man smiled, a kind, grandfatherly smile. "I am Arthur Caldwell. I was Harrison's father's attorney for 40 years, and I am Harrison's friend." The name made Paige's heart skip a beat. "Oh, how is he? Is he alive?" "They took him. He was paralyzed. He looked dead. He is alive, Paige. And lucid. He called me last night, hidden from a nurse." Paige leaned her forehead against the dirty glass, closing her eyes. "Thank God. Thank God." "He told me everything, about the trap, about the watch." Paige opened her eyes. "The watch. The camera. Did you get it? Did you get the evidence?" "Not yet. That's why I'm here." Arthur Caldwell pressed a paper against the glass. "I need you to sign this. It's an authorization for me to retrieve your personal belongings from the estate. But the house belongs to Conrad now. It doesn't matter. You lived there. The law states you have the right to retrieve your clothes and personal hygiene items. That's the loophole I need, to enter that room with a court-martial without raising suspicion that I'm looking for evidence. Conrad is arrogant. He won't search a bag of old clothes." Paige understood. The old man was a fox. "Arthur Caldwell, Conrad is the devil. Be careful. I changed Conrad's diapers, my dear. He was always a spoiled and cruel brat. But he made a fatal mistake." "What was it?" "He messed with the wrong woman. Harrison told me you carried him on your back for 3 floors. Paige ran her hand through her short hair, missing her curls. "I'd carry him again, even to heaven if I had to. I know. That's why I'm getting you out of here. Sign it." Paige signed the paper. The guard slid through the slot. Arthur Caldwell put the document in his folder. "Hold on tight, girl. Tomorrow is Judgment Day." At the Prescott estate, it was 2 in the afternoon and the sky was grey outside. Conrad was by the pool, drinking whiskey on the rocks, talking on the phone with a real estate agent. "Yes, you can demolish the outbuilding. I want to build a tennis court." The intercom rang. "Mr. Conrad," the doorman's voice said, "the court-martial is here, and Arthur Caldwell." Conrad rolled his eyes and hung up the phone. "Let them in. They must have come to deliver the bankruptcy notice for that cleaner." Minutes later, Arthur Caldwell entered the room, walking with the aid of a cane, followed by a uniformed and serious court-martial. "To what do I owe the honor, Arthur Caldwell?" Conrad didn't even get up from the lounge chair. "I've come to retrieve the belongings of my client, Miss Paige Brooks," Arthur Caldwell said, formally and coldly. "Judge Thornton authorized the removal of clothes and personal items. Her family requested it." Conrad laughed, swirling the ice in his glass. "Oh, right. Her rags. Feel free. Mrs. Gable will show you to the maid's quarters in the back." "Actually," Arthur Caldwell interrupted, his heart pounding, "some of her things were left in the master bedroom. She was sleeping there, wasn't she? Taking care of Harrison?" Conrad stopped laughing. He narrowed his eyes. "Yes, she was. You can go. But be quick. I had that room fumigated this afternoon to get rid of the smell of sickness." Arthur Caldwell's stomach dropped. If they had arrived an hour later, the exterminators would have turned everything upside down. Mrs. Gable, the housekeeper, appeared from the kitchen, drying her hands. She had that guard dog look. "Come," she said dryly. They went up the stairs. Harrison's room was cold. The bed was unmade, the sheets still crumpled from the moment of the invasion. Arthur Caldwell felt a pang in his chest, seeing the scene of violence against his best friend's son, but he focused on the nightstand. The black clock was there, silent, blinking a nearly invisible light. Arthur Caldwell began to gather some of Paige's clothes that were folded on a chair. He placed them in a plastic bag. He picked up the toothbrush from the bathroom. And then he casually walked over to the nightstand. "What are you going to do?" Mrs. Gable stepped forward, blocking his path. Arthur Caldwell did not back down. "Oh, this here," he pointed at the clock. "Paige said she bought this clock to time Harrison's medication. The receipt is in the confiscated bag. It's hers." It was a lie. But Mrs. Gable was not a police officer to know what was in the bag. Mrs. Gable looked at the clock, an ugly plastic object. "That really doesn't match the decor. You can take that trash." Arthur Caldwell took the clock. His hand was sweating, but he held it firmly. He felt the weight of the object, the weight of freedom. "Thank you, Mrs. Gable." He placed the clock in the bag, right in the middle of the bundled clothes. As they were leaving the room, Conrad appeared in the hallway, blocking their way. "Are you finished?" "Yes, Conrad. Just old rags." Arthur Caldwell raised the bag, shaking it. The watch was inside. If it hit anything... Conrad looked at the bag. For a second, Arthur Caldwell thought he would ask to search it. The air grew heavy. "Arthur Caldwell, tell me something." Conrad smiled cynically. Did he ask about me?" "I haven't spoken with Harrison, Conrad. He's incommunicado, isn't he?" "He is. Better that way. He's very aggressive." "A shame. A real shame. Take care." Arthur Caldwell walked past him. He went down the stairs, feeling Conrad's eyes burning into his back. As soon as he got into his old car in the parking lot and closed the door, Arthur Caldwell pulled the watch from the bag. He turned the object over. There was an SD card slot at the base. "Let's see what you saw, my little friend," Arthur Caldwell murmured, kissing the watch. It was midnight at Caldwell's law office. The office was dark, lit only by the blue light of the computer screen. Rain lashed against the window. Arthur Caldwell was sitting, watching the video for the 10th time. On the screen, the black and white image, night vision, was crystal clear. He saw the door opening with the master key. He saw Conrad Prescott sneaking in with the security guards. The struggle, the injection into Harrison Prescott's neck, the lights coming back on, and the audio was perfect. "Mrs. Gable, the kit, now." Arthur Caldwell saw Mrs. Gable taking the drugs from her apron and putting them into Paige Brooks's bag. He saw Conrad Prescott laughing and calling Captain Reynolds. Arthur Caldwell paused the video at the exact frame where Conrad Prescott held the medicine vials before putting them in the bag. His face was clear. The old attorney took off his glasses and rubbed his tired eyes. "That son of a..." he whispered to the screen. "You hanged yourself with your own rope, Conrad Prescott." He knew that was dynamite. If he took it on a flash drive, Conrad could try to break it, steal it, claim it was edited. Arthur Caldwell opened his browser. He accessed the encrypted court email. Attach file, send to Office of the Presiding Judge, urgent under seal. The upload bar filled. Sent. Now it was in the judiciary's cloud. No one could delete it. Arthur Caldwell looked at the photo of William Prescott on the wall. William, your son will be fine, and the daughter-in-law he chose, she's a good one. The next morning dawned grey and rainy. The front of the criminal courthouse was crowded. Reporters from sensationalist programs were at the door, yellow raincoats, microphones in hand. We are here awaiting the arrival of the crime princess, the cleaner accused of drugging textile heir Harrison Prescott, a reporter said. A black armored car arrived. Conrad stepped out, accompanied by 2 expensive lawyers. He put on a sorrowful face for the cameras. We only want justice. This is a painful time for the family, he said, his voice choked with emotion. Harrison is very ill. Inside, in the courtroom, the atmosphere was somber like a funeral. The side door opened. Harrison was brought in a wheelchair by the care center nurses. He wore blue hospital pajamas, was unshaven, his head lolling to the side, drooling slightly. Conrad, seated at the prosecution table, smiled discreetly. His cousin was destroyed. The plan had been perfect. Poor guy. Conrad whispered to the district attorney, DA. He doesn't even know what day it is. On the other side, the jail cell door opened. Paige entered, escorted by 2 police officers. The shock was visible. She wore the beige prison uniform and slippers. But what drew attention was her hair. Her long curls were gone. Her hair was short, choppy, close to her scalp. Her face was pale, with a purple bruise on her cheek, but she held her head high. When she saw Harrison in his wheelchair, her eyes welled up. Harrison, who seemed like a vegetable, raised his head ever so slightly. He saw Paige. He saw her cut hair. His heart ached, but he blinked once, slow and steady. Paige understood. He's faking it. He's with me. Arthur Caldwell entered last. He limped, but carried his laptop under his arm as if it were a loaded weapon. He sat next to Paige and held her hand. "Good morning, Your Honor," Arthur Caldwell said to Judge Thornton as he entered. Judge Thornton, a stern man in a black robe, sat at the head of the bench. Let's begin. This is a joint hearing to address the custody of the defendant Paige Brooks and the confirmation of the guardianship of Mr. Harrison Prescott. Conrad adjusted his tie. It was just a formality. He had already won. Judge Thornton looked at Harrison. "Mr. Harrison, do you hear me? Do you understand where you are?" Harrison remained silent for a long time. Conrad held back a laugh. His cousin was on Mars. Then Harrison straightened his back. He cleared his throat. The vacant look vanished, replaced by a steely gaze. "Yes, Your Honor." His voice came out hoarse, but it filled the room. "And I see, too. I see very well. Especially the snakes." Conrad stopped smiling. His lawyer frowned. Was the madman speaking complex sentences? Arthur Caldwell opened his laptop on the table. "Your Honor," Arthur Caldwell said, slowly rising. "Before we hear from any witnesses, the defense requests the presentation of new evidence. A video." Objection! Conrad's attorney leapt from his chair. "We were not notified of this evidence. This is an ambush. The evidence was filed with the court system and sent to your office last night, Your Honor," Arthur Caldwell said calmly. "It is a recording made in the victim's room at the exact moment of the alleged caught red-handed." Judge Thornton looked at his monitor. He saw the file Arthur Caldwell had sent. "The file is here, Counselor," Judge Thornton said to Conrad's attorney. "Given the seriousness of the drug trafficking charge, I will allow its display." Conrad felt his blood run cold. "A recording? What recording?" Arthur Caldwell connected the HDMI cable to the large screen in the room. The room darkened. On the giant screen, the image of Harrison's room appeared. The date and time in the corner, 2 days ago, 7:15 p.m. The image showed Conrad entering. It showed him placing the wine bottle on the table. "No," Conrad whispered, turning white as a sheet. In the video, the light went out. The infrared night vision activated. The image turned green and black, ghostly, yet clear. The door was seen opening. The injection into Harrison's neck was seen. Mrs. Gable was seen taking the drugs from her pocket. The truth was exploding in everyone's face. The courtroom was plunged into shadow, lit only by the cold, bluish light of the big screen. The silence was absolute, almost religious. Everyone watched, hypnotized by the brutal scene unfolding in visual silence, until the final audio, loud and clear, reverberated through the courtroom walls, destroying any doubt. "Mrs. Gable, the kit, now." On screen, housekeeper Mrs. Gable took the package from her apron. The gold watch, the stack of dollars, the vials of Black Label medication. With a terrifying calm, she stuffed everything into Page's humble fabric bag. "Ready, Conrad Prescott. The evidence of the crime is in place. See how easy it is? Now you're the addicted thief." Conrad's voice in the video was pure venom. The video ended. The screen went black. Arthur Caldwell paused the playback with a dry click on the keyboard and turned on the room lights. The effect was immediate, as if someone had burst a dam. A shocked murmur ran through the audience. Reporters frantically typed on their cell phones. The district attorney, DA, a serious man who until then had been sitting next to Conrad, abruptly pushed his chair away as if the defendant had a contagious disease. Conrad was paralyzed. His face, previously tanned and arrogant, was grey, lifeless. He opened and closed his mouth, but no sound came out. Sweat ran down his forehead, ruining the makeup he wore to look good on TV. Mrs. Gable, the housekeeper, who was seated in the front row of the audience, summoned to testify against Page Brooks, slowly rose, her legs trembling, trying to slip out towards the side door. "Where do you think you're going?" Judge Thornton's voice thundered, making Mrs. Gable jump. "Court-martial, close the doors. Nobody leaves this room." Mrs. Gable collapsed back into the chair, covering her face with her hands, sobbing uncontrollably. Conrad, feeling the noose tighten around his neck, leapt to his feet, knocking over the wooden chair with a crash. "This is fake!" he shrieked, his voice shrill, sharp with panic. "It's a setup! It's artificial intelligence! They fabricated this! Your Honor, Harrison is rich! He paid someone to make this video!" Judge Thornton adjusted his glasses on the bridge of his nose, looking at Conrad with an icy disdain that made the room freeze. "Mr. Conrad, the court's digital forensics team has authenticated the metadata of the file sent last night by Arthur Caldwell. The video is original, uncut. And your voice, well, your voice is unmistakable." "I'm innocent!" Conrad pointed a trembling finger at Harrison. "He's the crazy one. He set everything up. He's a vegetable. He's incapable of doing anything." Harrison, who until that moment had been quiet in his wheelchair, pretending to be sedated, made a move. He lifted his head. The vacant stare vanished. His eyes focused on Conrad like lasers. "I'm not crazy, Conrad," Harrison said. His voice was hoarse from disuse, but calm and sharp as glass. "I'm just a man who woke up." Harrison locked the wheels of his chair. He rested his pale hands on the metal armrests. "Harrison, no," Page whispered beside him, worried, seeing his effort. "You're too weak." But Harrison needed to do that. It was not a miracle. It was pure willpower fighting against atrophy. For 3 years, Conrad kept him sedated and bedridden so his muscles would weaken, selling the lie that his spinal cord injury was complete. But the injury was partial. His legs had sensation. What was missing was strength. And now he had strength to spare, fueled by hatred. With a grunt of pain, Harrison pushed his body upward. His arms trembled violently. His legs, thin and weak, swayed like green reeds. The room fell into absolute silence. Watching the invalid fight against gravity was mesmerizing. Harrison stood up, trembling, sweating cold, leaning heavily on the attorney's table to keep from falling. But he was standing, at eye level with his cousin. "You said I was a vegetable," Harrison said, gasping, each word costing him a lungful of air. "You said I needed a father. But you forgot one thing, cousin." Harrison took a tiny step, dragging his right leg. "You forgot I'm a Prescott, and we don't die easily." Conrad backed away, hitting his back against the courtroom wall, cornered by the presence of the man he believed to be dead. "Your Honor?" The district attorney, DA, stood up, wiping sweat from his forehead and adjusting his robe. "Given the irrefutable evidence of fabricated evidence, unlawful imprisonment, severe bodily harm, administration of an intoxicating substance, and procedural fraud, the district attorney's office requests the immediate preventive detention of Conrad Prescott and Mrs. Gable." Judge Thornton brought down his gavel. The sound was sharp, definitive, like a gunshot. Crack. "Granted. Officers, arrest the accused and issue the release warrant for the defendant Paige Brooks immediately. I hereby annul any guardianship proceedings against Mr. Harrison Prescott." Chaos erupted in the courtroom. 2 police officers advanced on Conrad. "No, get your hands off me! Do you know who I am?" Conrad screamed, thrashing like a spoiled child, his face red and swollen from crying. "I'll ruin your careers. I'm rich. I own Prescott Textiles." "You have the right to remain silent," the officer said impatiently, twisting Conrad's arm behind his back with practiced force. Click! The sound of the handcuffs clicking shut on Conrad's wrists was the sweetest melody Paige had ever heard. Mrs. Gable, the housekeeper, did not even resist. She extended her wrists to the other officer, sobbing loudly. "He made me do it. I just obeyed. He said he'd fire me if I didn't. I have children." Conrad was dragged down the central corridor of the courthouse, passing right in front of Harrison, who had slumped back into his chair, exhausted, and Paige. He stopped for a second, held by the guards. His hair was disheveled, his tie askew, his nose running. He glared at Harrison with pure hatred. "This isn't over, Harrison. The company is sold. The contract is signed. You're bankrupt. The Chinese money has already come in, and I transferred it out. You have nothing." Harrison looked at his cousin with pity. A deep pity. "The contract was signed by a fraudulent trustee, Conrad," Arthur Caldwell replied, smiling and closing his laptop. "It is null and void. The sale was cancelled 30 minutes ago. I personally called the central bank and the investors. The money has been refunded." The color drained from Conrad's face. His last triumph had evaporated. He wasn't rich. He wasn't powerful. He was just a bankrupt inmate. "Get him out of here," Harrison said softly, turning his face away. Conrad was led away, shouting obscenities, losing all pretense of a gentleman, revealing the small, pathetic monster he had always been. When the holding cell door closed behind him, the energy in the room shifted. The air became light. An officer approached Paige with a small silver key. "Excuse me, miss." He unlocked her handcuffs. The metal clinked onto the table. Clink. Paige Brooks rubbed her red-marked wrists, feeling the blood return to circulation. She looked at her free hands. Free. She looked at Harrison. He was pale, his pajama shirt sweaty from the effort of standing, but he was smiling at her. Paige Brooks couldn't take it anymore. She ran. She ignored the judge, ignored the lawyers, ignored court protocol. She threw herself onto Harrison in his wheelchair, hugging him so tightly that the chair spun slightly. Harrison held her, burying his face in the curve of her neck, smelling the prison scent, cheap soap, and cold sweat, which to him was the best perfume in the world. "It's over," he cried into her shoulder, sobbing like a child. "It's over, my love." "I was so scared," Paige Brooks sobbed, squeezing his back, feeling his bones. "I thought I'd never see you again. I thought they were going to kill you at that care center. I promised." Harrison moved back slightly to look at her face. His hands trembled as he touched her face. He ran his fingers through her short, choppy hair. "What did they do to your hair?" Paige lowered her head, instinctively trying to cover the uneven cut with her hands. "I had to cut it, to survive in there. The other inmates would pull it during fights. I'm ugly, aren't I? I look like a man." Harrison firmly held her chin and lifted her face into the light. "You are the most beautiful woman I have ever seen in my life. With hair, without hair, bald. You are my hero. You are my strength." The courtroom audience, lawyers, interns, and even the journalists began to applaud. Hesitant at first, then stronger. It was a collective catharsis. Harrison looked at Arthur Caldwell. The old attorney was wiping his glasses, emotional. "Arthur," Harrison called. "Did you keep it?" Arthur smiled and reached into his jacket pocket. "I retrieved it from your room yesterday, along with Paige's clothes. I knew you would need it." Arthur Caldwell handed Harrison a small blue velvet box, worn with time. Harrison held the box. He looked at Paige. "Paige," he said. The room fell silent again. "Harrison." "What?" Harrison tried to adjust himself in the chair. "I wanted to kneel," he said, frustrated with his legs. "But my legs still won't let me. So I'm going to ask you while looking into your eyes." He opened the box. Inside, a simple yellow gold ring with a small antique stone. "This ring was my mother's. She was the only woman who loved me without asking for anything in return. Until you came along." Paige brought her hands to her mouth, tears streaming through her fingers. "They took my dignity, my company, my freedom," Harrison Prescott said, his voice choked. "But they couldn't take you from inside me. You carried me on your back, Paige Brooks, literally. You bled for me on that staircase. No one has ever done that for me." "I would do it again," she whispered. "I know. And now I want to spend the rest of my life trying to repay you. I don't know if I'll ever walk 100% again. Maybe I'll need a cane. Maybe I'll need this chair sometimes. But I promise my heart will always stand tall for you." He held out the ring. "Paige Brooks, will you marry this broken man and fix his life forever?" Paige Brooks laughed and cried at the same time. She leaned in and kissed Harrison Prescott, a kiss salty with tears. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes, you stubborn man." Harrison Prescott placed the ring on her finger. It fit perfectly, even with her swollen and calloused hand. Arthur Caldwell closed his briefcase, satisfied. "Mission accomplished, William," he whispered to the ceiling, speaking to his deceased friend. "Your boy is in good hands." A year later, the midday sun beat down relentlessly on the concrete yard of the state penitentiary. The heat was unbearable, rising in waves from the ground. Conrad was no longer Dr. Conrad. Now he was just inmate 452 of cell block C. He was very thin, his skin peeling from the sun, wearing a grimy orange uniform that was too loose for him. He was on his knees on the floor of the communal showers, holding an old brush. "Scrub that right, Preppy," a huge inmate Tank yelled, kicking the bucket of dirty water. "It still smells like piss." "I'm cleaning," Conrad mumbled, his voice weak and broken. "I didn't hear you." Tank slapped Conrad on the back of his neck. "I'm cleaning, sir. Sorry," Conrad said quickly, trembling with fear, plunging the brush into the grey water. He went back to scrubbing the filthy latrine. His hands, which once only held sports car steering wheels and crystal glasses, were now full of sores and fungi. His always manicured nails were black and broken. He paused for a second to wipe away the sweat that stung his eyes. His back ached. It ached terribly. He had a flash of memory. He remembered Paige cleaning the corporate floor. He remembered how he used to mock her, how he once kicked her bucket just out of spite. "You were born for this, cleaner," he had said. Life had a cruel sense of humor. Now he was the cleaner, and no one was coming to save him. "Move it! Want to go to solitary?" the guard yelled, hitting his baton against the bars. Conrad lowered his head, crying silently, and continued to scrub away the filth of others. Meanwhile, 30 miles away, in another world, the Prescott Estate gardens were unrecognizable. Where before there had been dead grass, neglect and shadows, now there were colorful flower beds, white and blue balloons, and soft music playing. It was the 1-year anniversary of the rebirth. Harrison stood near the cake table. He held an elegant dark wood cane in his right hand, but his legs were steady. A year of intensive physical therapy, proper nutrition, and most importantly, love, had reversed the muscle atrophy. He limped, yes. He tired quickly, yes. But he walked. He looked at the world at eye level. He was talking with the company's new directors. Production increased by 30%, Harrison said confidently, holding a glass of juice. Because now the employees work happily. I had new elevators installed in all units, full accessibility. No one gets left behind in my company. Suddenly the music stopped. Everyone looked towards the patio door. Paige appeared. She was radiant. Her hair, which had been cut in prison, grew back strong and healthy, forming a crown of defined curls that shimmered in the sun. She wore a simple, elegant white linen dress. She still had the hands of someone who had worked hard, but now she carried herself like a queen, and in her arms, a precious bundle, a 3-month-old boy, chubby and smiling, wearing a navy blue romper, little William Jr., named after his grandfather. Harrison asked the directors for leave and walked over to them. The sound of his cane on the stone floor, tap-tap, was the sound of his victory. "My loves," he said, approaching, his eyes shining. Paige smiled, that smile that had saved his life. He was crying from hunger in there, but he heard his father's voice and stopped right away, she said, carefully passing the baby into Harrison's lap. Harrison let go of his cane, which rested against his body, and took his son with both strong arms. The baby grasped his finger. "Hey, Billy," Harrison whispered, enchanted. "You're going to grow up knowing your mom is a warrior, you know?" Paige hugged Harrison around the waist, resting her head on his shoulder. She looked at his legs. "You've been standing for a long time, love. Don't you want to sit? The chair is right there." Harrison looked at the wheelchair, which was in a corner, available for when he got tired. Then he looked at Paige and their son. "I can manage a little longer." He smiled. "I like seeing you both from up here." Arthur Caldwell, sitting in a garden chair drinking iced tea, watched the scene with a satisfied smile. Nurse Meredith, now hired as the head housekeeper and nanny at the estate, earning very well and treated like family, was beside him serving cake. Harrison looked at the blue sky. The storm had passed. He turned to Paige and gave her a soft kiss on her forehead. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" she asked, straightening the collar of his shirt. "For carrying me when I couldn't walk, and for walking by my side now that I can." Paige smiled and kissed her husband. "I'll always carry you, Harrison, in my heart." And so, beneath the blue sky, the blooming garden celebrated the party and the genuine happiness of that unlikely family, with the sun shining high and erasing any shadow of the past. Did you enjoy this story? Do you think Conrad's punishment, becoming a prison janitor, was fair, or did he deserve to suffer more? What did you think of Harrison's triumph? Let me know in the comments below, and subscribe so you don't miss the next audio drama.